Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide online divorce, mediation, and valuation services in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we will discuss turning disrupted leaders into a disruptive force with Michael Teape. Since 1994, Mike has been conducting business and personal effectiveness design and delivery training. He's been coaching, training the trainers, and developing training strategy for a wide spectrum of clients. He works for global corporations, leading training firms, and universities, as well as small and middle market businesses. Welcome, Michael. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on, Melissa. I really appreciate it. It's nice to be here.
Yes, this is awesome. It's a little bit different than our normal topics, but
Mm.
I think it's very applicable to what people are going through right now. And quite frankly, this type of concept of what disruption we're dealing with and as leaders, how we deal with it, I think we're all looking around being like, what
Yeah.
do we do? How do we do this? And so, what is disruptive in the world of business right now that from your perspective? Like let's
I
hit
mean,
some highlights.
how long have you got? Um,
Right.
you know, it'd be easier to say what isn't disruptive, right? And that's the thing is we already had disruption in our businesses across business sectors, but then we added COVID to it. So, remember, there are some key areas that all businesses face. One is the fact that climate change is affecting our business practices, whether we're forced to change things, or whether we're thinking ahead of that. And everyone's watching us as we do that, as we're leading our organizations. So that's a big piece. The second one is very much around social change. So you've got the big how our world's affected, but then there's how do the human beings interact. And social change is that people are looking for the companies that they join and they give money to as customers. What's your opinion on Black Lives Matters? How are you going around looking out, making sure that things are not so easy for me to say, equity, right?
Mhm.
Inequality. Do you have fair practices to talk about race, sexism, all of those practices? So we're under more of a microscope of who we've got working with us to affect and give our end product, but also how we're treating them. So that's another huge piece. You've got climate change, you've got social change. There's obviously the fourth industrial revolution, technology.
Mm.
That's and the fact that there's so much like in the financial sector, as you know, fintech startups are totally disrupting how larger financial institutions are working. I mean, I used to work at JP Morgan myself, and yeah, it was uncanny. Like, oh, well, now we can do everything at a press of a button and a minuscule amount of the original price that you can with your big systems. So, technology innovation has meant that's disrupted markets. I'm thinking finance, at least, pharma, retail, um, everything you can think of. So those three, and then overall, you've got COVID,
Right.
and the COVID has had this huge impact of, well, what do we do now? It's total uncertainty. So if you're going to be disrupted, if you weren't disrupted before, thinking about, well, what's my strategy and direction on, and maybe looking at a long-term and a short-term business gain, you certainly are now because you have no idea. Right back at the beginning, we were washing our vegetables. We're washing everything, wiping down everything as it came in from the store. That mindset, a lot more uncertainty and it having effect on people's health, and it was instantaneous and instantly, people weren't shopping anymore. I've got a client who has pivoted really well. They've been the disruptors, not the disrupted. I'd like to say that was down to me, but their CEO and the senior leadership were amazing. They were going for 30% growth of their product globally in financial services, and it was going well. They were really putting in some gains, but that just vanished. You just don't need those kind of cash management systems globally. People aren't spending money. Money's not
Hmm.
moving. So
Hmm.
how you're charging is not they're on volume, it's not going to work. So they took it back. They looked at, well, how do we want to fix our mergers, make ourselves more efficient. So when we come back, because we know we're going to come back, we're going to have a seamless product for the client. Because at the moment, it feels very much like mergers, and we're running to try and catch up. They were being disrupted, even though they were the disruptors. The technology they were trying to keep up with, and mergers and acquisitions. So for them, it was like, okay, we know we can't do this, so let's not do it. Let's focus on what we want the future to look like. How are we going to build that so when we come back, we're much better placed?
Well, and I think
So,
it's very interesting because, a lot of kind of business leaders that are still out there could be still part of the baby boomer generation. And then we kind of come in and maybe we're, Gen Xers or
that'll be me.
millennial. Yeah. Yeah. And we have all of these different things. And what I have been really, I work with a lot of businesses, and I've been saying, everything that we have done in the past, everything, like almost down to like how you brush your teeth, how you just function in the world. I mean, you gave a great example of how we shop, right? How we shop for food. That was always a given. All of these things were a given of how we did them. That's how it has always been done, right? And then this all comes up, and we're living in this kind of economic time where everything I think should be revisited. Every way, every process, every way you acquired a client, right? In the past, every way that you've done something, you need to reassess. Is that what you're also seeing that a lot of leaders are doing?
I wish. I really do. What I'm seeing is that, well, when COVID hits and you lose all your revenue, much like that affected my business, doing a lot of face-to-face, instantly, bam, zero. You went from a lot to zero, and then having to transform and do more virtual. That's a great example. Well, a lot of them they were, okay, we need to survive. So they went into survival mode. They didn't go into innovative strategy speak. The example I gave you is one of the rare few that did. And they were like panicking and how can I prove this? Have a look at the shipping issues that we're having right now, the delivery issues. So if people had taken the time, they would have thought, well, as we come out of this, how can we be leaner and how can we make sure that we're not affected by this? They must have known this was going to happen. Being British, Brexit is a huge change for the market in Europe, both in the UK and the rest of Europe. They must have seen their shipping issues going to be a problem. And when they got their drivers from Europe, they can no longer work there. So, I mean, I'm simplifying the problem a little bit, but none of that. And there was no thought of innovation and iterative learning loops. Easy for me to say is okay, let's try something small. Let's try something different, and let's do a few different ideas in tandem and see what works. See what works. Just try it. Don't spend too much money and too much time, but talk to everybody. That is a disruptor. That's how fintech works. That's how startups work. They're not bothered about, well, this is my budget. This is my insular silo. So I've definitely felt that most of the leaders have been like, I have a panic situation, I need to do something quick, and they run faster, but didn't take the moment to think, okay, well, what does the future look like?
Right.
And I think that's what we call the pendulum of reaction. Well, I call it that anyway. Is that some people overreact and they'll overstock. They'll try and buffer what they already have, right? Toilet paper. Why do people buy lots of toilet paper? I have no idea, but they did an awful lot of it. So, and the same thing's true for leaders in organizations. They want to protect, they want to put a bubble around what they've already created. That's disrupted leadership. Disruptor leadership would be, oh, that's interesting. Things are changing. As a pendulum swings into the middle, they have been more adaptive and calm about it. And they're thinking more calmly, but it takes like an offsite. It takes like a half day away. It doesn't take too long with your key people, and just to ask them what's going on and try and activate that more of a innovative mindset, creative mindset.
Well,
Yeah,
and I think that your analogy was kind of interesting because you're working with clients that have 250 employees, 500 employees, a
yeah,
lot of employees, right?
mm,
And so in some respect, I see that as like a big cruise line ship, right? Like it's not easy to just turn that big old ship. And, in some capacity, when you're seeing some of these leaders currently getting disrupted,
mm,
are they really getting disrupted at the macro level? Like, are they saying, oh my, I mean, because we're all like, the world is crazy right now. But
yeah.
then you have to go kind of micro and you have to go into the company. Where do you see a lot of these leaders getting disrupted internally? Because, again, are these the leaders that are in power, or are these the leaders that are trying to move that ship and twist it a little bit?
Yeah, so within, when you think about how they're getting disrupted, it's there's a couple of things going on. So when you're disrupted, you're pushed in a position of reaction, a
Mm,
feeling of threat. You're feeling you've been threatened, and if you're in an organization, things don't change that much. Your report structure, unless you're doing the strategy and direction, and it's when it suddenly comes into view, the threat comes into view. So there's three levels of threat. I use David Rock's work from the Neuro Leadership Institute a lot, and his stuff is all about, well, what threatens people? How do you put them in a
mhm.
forward state so they can be open, have discussions, not feel threatened, and how do you stop them from being pushed into a whoa, this is risky situation? And he talks about three levels of threat on the brain. So if you imagine leaders within an organization, if they think, oh look, there's something on the horizon, like we've got a big change that's happening, we're merging, or our figures weren't so good last quarter, that's a broad event. So okay, I could see it, doesn't affect me instantly, so I'm not activated by it just yet. But then what happens is, okay, it's in my neighborhood. Now my division
Mm,
is having problems. They're not making the revenue expectations. They're talking about some cuts. Okay, all right. Now I'm feeling a little bit more disrupted. And then when it's with you and you've been given a problem to deal with from the next level up, it's like, okay, I need you to reduce your expenditure by 10%. I need you to ramp up distribution by whatever percent. We need
right.
to shift. We need to close down Atlanta, and we need to move to more east or west coast so we can get out of America a bit more and spread. We need to go global real quick because the market's drying up. Okay, now I'm like, okay,
Like, oh, oh,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So how they're disrupted shows up, and this might be useful for all leaders to think about themselves and also how their colleagues, their leadership peers are showing up. It's back to that pendulum. The pendulum swings, right? And usually in this world, it swings to overreaction. Oh my God, the
Mhm.
world's about to end. Huge generalization, running around, staying up late, meetings are not really getting very far. So overreacting. But as the pendulum swings back again, goes to underreactive.
Mm,
Yeah. So people are like, oh, I'd be all right. Yes. And that's the usual reaction you get most of the time within an organization, unless they see it as a threat. It's like, oh, I'll be fine. We've had changes before. We've got through rough patches before. And they don't really change anything. They keep doing the same thing. They might
mm.
worry a little bit more, but they're not being innovative. And then as the pendulum comes back again to the middle, that's a state of adaptive calm. Is
Okay.
that's the area where it's like, okay, we let's this is changing. Let's do two things. Let's scenario plan. What if? What could we do? What might we do? And let's stay calm, because if you are overreacting or underreacting, I think I did it that way.
You
Um,
did.
you're you cannot focus. You cannot ask questions. You cannot think calmly and talk to people in a calm way. So they often get activated. There's a number of ways. There's a few models that I use to do that. but it's getting back to that calm moment. So they are disrupted by having a threat imminently in their backyard, as it were, and then it's okay, they're either overreacting or they're underreacting, and we want to try and help them move them to the middle, the calm.
Yes. I think we all want to be in the calm, but it's
Yeah, it's
it's
not an
not as
easy place
easy
to get to.
Well, and you talk about some things that I think will help leaders either resonate with or kind of understand, like, because I'm thinking, am I disrupted right now or am I not? Like, what are some of the deadly
Mhm,
sins of a disrupted mindset that we should avoid? Like, how do we even know? Because there's been so much change lately. Like, maybe I'm just coping. I don't know.
mhm. Well, there's the do you feel psychologically safe?
Hmm.
Because that's actually the physical threats you would receive. Maybe if you walk near the edge of a cliff area and there's a nice, beautiful lake below you and you stumbled, you'd have a certain reaction.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you feel that level of physical reaction when you're at work when an email comes in? Yeah.
Mm,
Or you don't even open it, or you get a phone call and it comes up from a certain client or a certain leader or a certain person. Do you start having those reactions that are like the threat reactions? That's telling me that you are activated. You are really overreacting to that situation. Um, so there's to watch that. Physical is number one to watch out for. Two is, do you ever play back? I'm actually going to ask you this. Do you ever play back what you've just said in a conversation, maybe a meeting? And most people play it back and say, I wish I did something better than that. Usually a reply, a response. Um, but if you play it back and realize that you were overgeneralizing, that's
mhm.
one of the three deadly sins. Actually, overgeneralizing is number one. Is, well, that always happens. Is, oh, that group over there in accounting, they never get it right, or
Right.
they never respond. They always come back with questions. Always, never. That's absolute statements. And if people are doing that in your group and you're doing it, that's an overreaction, right?
Sure.
So that's showing you that you are activating, you are disrupted. The other two, the three deadly sins are overgeneralizing,
Okay.
um, deletion. So deleting facts or not paying attention to facts that don't support your ideas or narrative. So the research, you're looking for your research. Okay, we get so so politics is a really good example of this. So local politics has been huge across America. I don't really want to get into it
Right.
for obvious reasons. And my town was particularly affected by this. But there's distortion was the fact that certain people believed they were going to get a certain amount of voters. They believed that there was a silent majority. But when you looked at the facts and the parties they were talking about, that party only had less than a third of the registered voters. Yeah. And a third were unregistered, so
Mm,
it wasn't really, it's like, well, even if the people with your mindset, that's only a third, they
mhm,
they deleted that completely. And
mhm.
it felt like they were running on the fact that their party was the whole voting community. Do you see what I
Mhm.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
believing too much that, oh, I see one fact, I've grabbed it, and that's the truth for me. And that's why my strategy is going to work. I've seen that in this region of sales, there are however many thousand of our ideal target clients. So we're definitely going to get them. I said, well, hang on a minute. How are you going to get them?
Right.
It's a little bit. You've deleted and only chosen certain facts. So deletion, uh, overgeneralizing, and distortion. Yeah, distortion is only talking about things that are importance to you and what you want to get done. So you're distorting the facts to just represent you in an organization, just represent the marketing point of view, not the facts that there's a distribution issue
Sure.
within the organization. Okay, so deleting facts, distorting, focusing just on your narrative, and overgeneralizing are the three
Well,
three
and
areas.
And like psychologically, isn't that just what we do as humans? Like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to research and find support for my
Yes.
position, right?
Yes,
Like, I'm going to tell you that this is why this is right. Is this, I mean, because
that is the real problem. Yeah, that's yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with social media. Most people are not looking for the opposite viewpoint. Okay,
Mhm,
well, doesn't even have to be an opposite, a different viewpoint.
right.
Um, so they dig in, they double down, right? They've said a
Mhm,
statement and somebody came back with a, well, actually, in this area, it doesn't work. Really? Well, here's another piece of information that tells me you that I'm right.
mhm,
So there's an absolute, once you start just following your narrative and not listening to the other point of view, that's you've lost it, really. And look, who's going to realize they're in that position as a leader? Who's going to realize that they are spending way too much talking about their own ideas and not about others? The only way, there's only two ways you can get feedback as a leader. And one is to go and ask people for direct feedback that you know and trust, but ask them specifically, am I considering all options here?
mm,
Was I, did I consider anyone's or the other person's viewpoint in this meeting? You have to be very specific. And the other one is self-reflection. So we self-reflect after each meeting, ask you these questions. Did I show up and serve everybody in that meeting? So these are big questions. These are more growth mindset questions to break yourself out of being disrupted and be more of a disruptor looking. And that usually means looking at the whole picture and being thoughtful and considerate,
mhm.
and just asking, well, what if we tried this? Without thinking, well, I don't want to say that because if I say we could try this, my boss is going to think we're going to do it and I'm going to be fired if I don't. Do you see? That's a disrupted.
Right.
And there needs to be some kind of psychological safety in that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah. It's a
good.
great point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I probably should take notes because this is these are some things that I might need to work on as well.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you you
I'm guilty of them too, right? It's, just because I'm saying it. My father has a saying. I've got a lot of fatherly sayings. One is I do as I say and not as I do.
right.
Is that was one of his favorite things. So yeah, I'm activated all the time. But it's realizing that. So in any one day, you're going to get disrupted by a situation happening that you didn't expect.
Hmm.
Um, you're going to get disrupted by certain people talking to you that you've already made a generalization that we had a bad situation or we had a bad conversation and now they hate me, or
Hmm.
now they're out to get me.
Hmm.
That's disrupted. So yeah,
Very
good
interesting.
points.
Well, and if we go back a little bit though, we've talked about the disruption and I've identified some character flaws there, but let's go back to some of the calm.
Mm.
Like what you were talking about some kind of neuro
Yes.
models
Yeah.
and neuroscience and this scarf model. So what is this model and how does it help leaders become more
Right.
adaptable, more calm, all of those things? Can we use it like when things are really going crazy, is and how do we do that?
Every day we can use scarf.
Okay.
What I like, look, we're talking about scarf because I feel it's the core model of pretty much all leadership sessions, leadership events. When you bring leaders together, it's like, look, what's our environment like? Are we creating an environment that allows people to be calm, adaptive scenario plan, and be creative, be a disruptor? What
Hmm.
if, try these different things? That piece is what we're looking for. In order to do that, the scarf model was a creation from David Rock, who actually he lives in New York, just outside of New York City now. He's Australian originally. um, and he talked about, well, what psychological safety really mean, what reactions are we having, and the link to our primal brain, our reactions. You might have
Hmm.
heard of amygdala hijacking, um,
Hmm.
where we have an instant reaction to things. Well, unfortunately for us, those physical things in the past are still here in the corporate world, and we react just the same way as we would if it was a physical threat to us. So the scarf model is exactly what's important to human beings for their psychological safety, for them to get into that position of calm.
Okay.
And that's what it's all about. And SCARF stands for someone's status. S is for status. Has that been unfairly affected? Do they feel that someone's status has been held true? So
Mm.
status. Um, my favorite one is certainty. Right, with COVID, there was no certainty. So certainty, replacing it with clarity. What can they be certain of? A third is the autonomy. How much autonomy do they have in their role? How related do they feel? Are they related? Is there relatedness, I should say, between the leader, the teams, and the broader organization? And lastly, fairness.
Mm.
Fairness is a huge factor. So, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So, I mean, you think about fairness. Does somebody think they're being fairly treated, or others are being
Mhm.
fairly treated? Is a huge part of someone's makeup. And when that's threatened, when they feel that there's favoritism in an organization, when they feel that people are being forced to do something they don't need to do, like come back to work
Mhm.
after the pandemic of everyone being 100% virtual, and then that trickle back. If they don't feel the policies are fair that the leaders are working on, that's going to create people feeling attacked, and they're certainly not going to be able to work on the valuable thought of where we're going to take our business forward. How do we move it forward in the new environment?
Mhm.
So that's a big one, and status is a little bit like that as well. So status is talking all about, have I made you, belittled you as a person or your work? Have I dismissed your, oh, that doesn't work? Or in England we might say, well, that's rubbish, but it's a throwaway comment, and it's like,
Right.
well, who wrote this, or not giving it the respect it deserves. That can force people into feeling threatened. Makes
Mhm.
sense, right? It's
Mhm.
in the wild, it was, when you're being attacked physically. Well, this one is, you're physically attacking my role and what I do. You're belittling it. um it's like somebody saying, well, you just do training, you know
Mhm.
well, you just do litigation.
Yeah.
Simple process, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that can come out of people's mouth and you're instantly threatened. Well,
Mhm.
imagine if there's no consideration in how the organization is set up around your status. So
Mhm.
just got promoted to being a junior manager, but no one really recognizes it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. Oh, you're not a real manager, just a junior manager at the moment. So all of these things threaten us, push us into a disrupted state. Uncertainty is the biggest one of all, especially at the moment, is that we're not certain
Yeah.
about, can we get affected or not. But as we've gone through a year and a half of COVID, we're pretty sure if we rock up to an environment where we're fairly close with the mask, I haven't heard of any cases in that environment, say, in a safer state, so to speak. So I'm feeling pretty certain that I'm not going to get affected, which means I'm not feeling disrupted, not worrying about my health.
Mm.
I can focus on having a conversation with a colleague about a business challenge. That
Mhm.
wasn't, I mean, people couldn't even, you couldn't even cough in a supermarket without someone looking at you like this,
Mhm.
and that's an instant disrupted reaction. They can't
Mhm.
focus on what they're there to do. They probably forgot the groceries they needed. Same's true in the office. Early on, it's like, well, how close can I get to this person?
Right.
Um, and that's all they can think about, is consuming. So if you don't have certainty, what you could do is work on is clarity. And clarity is being, well, we don't know what the infection rate is, but what we will do is we're going to follow the recommendations. So when they say we have to stay 6 foot apart with masks, we will follow that. And we'll review it every week to make sure that our office is adhering to that. So what you've done is you've created calm in that person. Okay, so you're going to review everything. You're going to let me know what the rules are, and pretty much, we stick to the rules. We should be okay. So
Mhm.
that's not certainty, but that's just clarity, and
Mhm.
and clarity of, like, what a lot of people did, and this was huge on LinkedIn for organizations. was to say, hey, we're not going to worry about coming back to work. You can stay at home and work as long as possible. As long as you need to. Sorry, not long as possible.
Right.
Like we're not going to give you a date to come back. We're not going to do that. And people are, oh, phew, I'm clear. I have clarity that I don't have to go back to work yet. So I've created certainty on that. I can relax and focus on the business issues at hand. And that's how that's worked throughout that. I mean, the other ones, relatedness, feeling secure with others, around you. That's related is the fact that likability, and when you're in an office, the camaraderie, the culture that we've built, and feeling safe in that is very important. So when you get too many people that you don't know what they're talking about, you don't know where they've come from, you don't know their background, you don't know anything about them personally, it can peel off that layer and you feel a bit more vulnerable. Okay, so that's relatedness, in as much as that was easy to do face to face. Right? Think about it. Our leaders were used to mostly being in the office, and remote workers as well, but we made efforts to include them over time. Then all of a sudden, everyone's gone to individual basis. So you've got a group of people who are a group of individuals, and then 25%, 30% resign, moved on to other roles. So now you've got all these new people that you haven't had the chance to develop a relationship with. So where's the relatedness doesn't exist.
Right.
It's like you and I, yeah, we've met, we're cordial, we're introduced, but we don't know a lot more about each other. And that's the same, that what used to be, hey, we got these people are new this week, let's go and have lunch. Let's welcome them in. I can see you got pictures of your family around your cubicle. Oh, I have family too. So there's relatedness. Oh, you're a cat lover. So that's one of the reasons why there are so many cat and dog pictures on the internet and in the office, is because we all can relate to it.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, well, I had one when I was a kid. I haven't got one now. You've got a cat. Oh, I'm seeing things that I can relate to. So one of my biggest piece of advice for leaders is to have, like I have behind me right now, a few personal things on the desk, and reach for things like your books. And it sounds very manufactured, but keep the books behind you so people could see what you've got, and have meaning. Everything's got meaning. I've got a photo of my daughter. I've got a squeegee toy that I've always used in all my training. There's a Yorkshire tea box, which is a little bit about what I like. And some personal reading items. So you're just trying to create a relatedness in a virtual world. And it makes people connect with you more, reduces their feeling of disruption, and they trust you more. So therefore they are, when you ask them, what ideas have you got on this project? What do you think we could try? They're more likely to relax and say, well, I trust you from the relatedness and I'm going to contribute, rather than, I don't really want to say something that sounds silly, or I don't want to say something that might affect my career. That nagging thought, and that's someone who's disrupted. So we need to get as many people into that forward thinking as possible. And and I think I mentioned autonomy as well. Yeah, that autonomy. So that area is having control over your circumstances. So if and during work, that's, hey, I'll give you the objective. You do it how you want to do it. You want to go and talk to the people you need to talk to, have phone conversations, coffees, whatever you need to do with people in general. And what that does is people feel as though they have control. And if you feel as though you have control, great, you're more likely to be an innovative, creative thinker, not take things too personally, not overreact, clear, purpose-driven, ask questions before you take actions, drastic, quick actions as well. So that piece is important. Now, at home, when we think about the fact that we're virtual, having the autonomy to stop what you're doing and go and deal with a personal issue, or changing up your day. I'm going to do a couple of hours of work in the morning, but I do need to go and get my kids, because everyone is now driving their kids to school instead of taking the school bus.
Hmm.
Okay. Now that is a nightmare on its own, if you can only imagine that. I have two children myself, and we've been doing this for a year. Um, and the buses are back now, but not barely anyone's using them.
Right.
So that's twice in a working day where I'd need the autonomy to say, I can leave my work now and I feel good about it. I'm going to go and pick up my kids, spend half an hour with them, get back to work.
Well,
Yeah.
and
So having that autonomy to be able to do that without a manager saying, we need to meet at that time when you need to pick the children up.
right. And a lot of this is all, I mean, it seems like it's all connected to communication. So if you have some
Mm,
uncertainty, then you need to be very clear about what you do know. I also think your analogy of the pendulum is very interesting because I would almost say that in the pendulum of overreacting and then underreacting even to COVID, I think that a lot of organizations then got back to the calm, right? And then they did
yeah.
you know what? We're going to have everybody come back to the office. And it's like, whoa, we just got everything calm.
Mm,
Now we're making the pendulum go again
like, wow.
because we're
Yeah.
changing how people were living. I mean, this isn't just work anymore. This is how they had, because I grew up that you go to work from 8 to 5, and you take a lunch, and then I actually grew up in a couple industries like mergers and acquisitions or investment
Yep.
banking, where you actually worked from like 6 a.m. to like
Yeah.
9 p.m. or whenever the
I know it
last
well.
person left.
Yeah.
And other types of things. So I think that that's the interesting piece, is kind of, even as a leader, understanding where your organization is on that pendulum.
Hmm.
Like if a lot of people are overreacting or underreacting or in the calm, what are you going to do to then swing it again, or to kind of
Yeah.
enjoy that space, right?
Yeah, it's you want to spend the objective of leaders should be to spend as much time in the calm as possible.
Mhm.
However, is that don't create a fake blanketed environment around, well, this is no, I talked about that earlier with business goals. I want to save my business as it is
Mhm.
just not going to happen. Things
Mhm.
have changed. You have to move forward and develop your business. That's the certainty, is that you have to move forward and change your business. The same is true for humans. If you say, well, I'm going to just create this world, a bubble for you, and you're going to be fine, then they don't have real reactions in life.
Mhm.
And that's the whole how people experience change, is how they go through change. So by spending too long not addressing the issues, and I've got a great example. There's two of my clients that I've been talking to who have delayed their coming back to work until, we're not talking about it till next year, and that's a great strategy for a year ago. you know but now people know that so many other people are coming back. The real world is telling them that so many people are going to come back, and so they're uncertain. Well, what's that going to look like? They're
Right.
worrying about what that'll look like in Q1. Yeah.
Yeah.
What they should be doing is giving them a roadmap now, of saying, this is our plan to come back, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do 3 days in the office, 2 days out of the office, certain spacing, following the rules. But they were like, no, let's they're in a good place, let's try and keep them there, and we'll create a fake environment. But it doesn't work, because human beings are not stupid, and they can see the world is carrying on outside of them, and they're like, well, and so all they're doing is worrying about the uncertainty of the future. Yeah, it's a really good point. And
Yeah.
so
And
I'd be careful of bubble wrapping. Bubble
mm,
wrapping. Be careful of staking that pendulum and holding it, so it doesn't swing. Because a little bit of movement shows, it's human, and we can still talk to people. And one of the things I say before, especially during COVID, is all meetings with a leader and any one of their peers, their peers, they're the people that work for them, the team members, is, how are you winning? Is the first thing to say to them. Yeah. What's on your mind, and how can I support you? Three things, and you'll cover everything you'll need to know.
mhm.
But we started with, how are you winning? So you're trying to get them into a mindset of, Yeah, where are my successes? How are you winning? Well, I managed to get to my desk today for 3 hours. It was great, my son didn't do X, great, let's celebrate the wins. Yeah, great job, I managed to get this report out. But it's getting people to understand the certainty of certain wins are going to happen in front of them, then ask them, what's not working, and then provide full open support. Therefore, you're giving them relatedness, autonomy, fairness, a feeling of fairness. You're hitting the whole
Mm-hmm.
scarf model, and and a bit of clarity, getting them to think around clarity of what they've achieved in a day
Mm-hmm.
as well. So yeah, it's
Well, and from
difficult.
my standpoint, like in talking to some of these leaders and how they make conversations with other people to keep them in the calm, right? In some capacity.
Mm,
I also think that in another capacity, we have to start getting out of this mindset that we have control over the uncertainty, that we can somehow predict the future, or that we were good at doing it in the past and now we don't know how. No, you weren't good at doing it, just things didn't change as rapidly.
mm,
You just kind of were changing as slow as everything else was. And I think that, moving them out of that sense of security in knowing what the future is a false situation. Whereas if you start to say change is absolute, change will continue to happen, how do we then get in that mindset of being part of the ingenuity that change can create, as opposed to the fear of, oh, I won't be good anymore, or I was really good
mm.
at what I did, and now I'm going to have to learn something new. Like, how do we start to embrace it, because it's always
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah, I think it helps a little bit of future state, which a lot of more senior leaders are better at. And that's probably why they're more calm than maybe subordinates, because their team members or employees, whatever you want to call them, they don't have the line of sight that you have. They don't
Mm,
have the data about where the organization is going. So you could be more of a calm person because you can see it, you can see it evolving. Whereas they're like, what? You just told me this person's left and I'm moving division. What? you know,
right.
so so that's some of the quick tips really is to communicate more. And I know it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but to talk about what you said last time, where we are, where we're going to, we're going to have a temperature check, whatever you want to call it, a business update, um, and just um, make sure that people are aware of what you're trying out. Hey, we're working on this because this might be a possibility for the environment. So we don't know how that's going to work out. We're an incubator stage. That's what we're working on. If you want to get involved in that, anyone want to share some ideas? Oh, cool. So every time you communicate about bringing people together and thinking through ideas, which is the mindset you want them to have. You don't go around saying, well, this we've now got to deal with 25% reduction in staff because of the great resignation. um, what you do say is, hey, now that we've all noticed that there is a decrease in, we've got an increase in open position, a decrease in people actually in seats. Okay, perhaps it's time to think about what we can automate. What can we get out of our way so we don't have to be running around doing busy work? Yeah. What
Mm-hmm.
would you like to work on? Tell me what you'd like to work on and tell me what you want to get rid of. That is a disruptor in a disrupted environment. So you're right. It's all about conversations that we're having a one-on-one level and a team level, and coming into it with this. I'm curious. What do you think? I'm curious. Look, this is where we think this is going, but what can we do in order to make sure we can adapt? Because what's not relevant anymore? What's not relevant? What do we need to archive?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what you find then is egos come into play, which affects people's status. If I've met quite a few, it's funny. I work with different levels of leaders in organizations. So when I'm usually doing the mass management training, I tend to meet the mid level, and it's very interesting when you then meet the senior leadership, and they have a different view. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
that's happened a lot of times, about 6 or 7 times. And they're the ones that don't want to get let go. Usually, if they've founded something, if they've been with the organization for a long time and they're very proud of their achievements, it's very difficult to change the way they work. It's very difficult to be a disruptor, and they are disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
If they built, I was a brick and mortar, some manufacturing, say they built a manufacturing factory and all the rest of it, it's very difficult to just suddenly say, okay, we don't need this anymore.
Right.
Like, really? I spent 5 years building this. It is state of the art, fastest production line, fastest in and out of delivery supply. You know, they could name everything that's wonderful about it. That's a problem. That's a big red light. You have been disrupted, because we don't need that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What we need is things like making sure the quality, or the customer still gets the quality, but we don't need the bricks and mortar. What would be better is if we sold that to people that actually want that building, and let our people stay remote, because they've got their remote, and come into smaller areas, research labs for the next stage of your
Mm-hmm.
organization. You see where I'm going with this? It's ego. If you're proud you built something, you're going to be very difficult to be a disruptor. You're going to be more disruptive.
Well, and it is difficult to change what your perception of it is. Like even
Hmm.
when we started the pandemic, I was so used to delineating work and home, right?
Hmm.
Work
Yes.
and
Yeah.
home. And
Me
and
too.
we have a small office, so like I could still go to the office, and then I assembled a work from home office because we had to do homeschooling and stuff like that, or
Oh yeah.
whatever.
I can see the
it
wrinkle in that.
wasn't it wasn't
Homeschooling?
homeschooling
No, it
because I
wasn't.
wasn't active in it, but we had to like make sure they did whatever. And to me it was very difficult. It was very difficult to be like, okay, I'm going to pause this work, and I'm going to answer a question that you have on your homework, like, cuz we're all kind of sitting. I mean, it just blew my mind because that was how I dealt with it. When I left and went home, then I would be at home. But like
Mm.
being at home and being working and taking a break, like I don't take
So
so that was
yeah,
really hard.
yeah, it is hard, and that's what a lot of people were talking to me about, like, how do I transition from one to the other, um, and things like making sure you switch off everything in your office and put
Yeah.
everything set up, and your
Yeah.
top five things, so you've closed your mind down, means that as soon as you walk out that door, the other side of that door is your kids' bedrooms,
Mhm.
or if it's downstairs, it's the kitchen, what
Mhm.
have you. So as soon as you walk through that door, you're in another world. And it's when
Mhm.
people start to realize that, okay, and what do I want to do with my time with my family?
Mhm.
And then you can switch pretty quickly. But it's routine. You have to set routine. People have routines, right? They have a certain way they walk a certain way through the park, they get their Starbucks coffee.
Mhm.
There's a certain routine to the day, the way they put on their clothes, the way they put the makeup on. Everything is a routine. But if you can activate your routines so they work for you and not against you, because there are routines where we check Facebook or whatever our social media is.
Right, right.
They are routines that, oh, we wanted a dopamine hit from it. Oh, I've been working too hard, or I'm just going to look at this. And then we get
Mhm.
sucked into it and we lose our time. Um, but if we realize that's happening and build routines that are going to make us successful,
Mhm.
leaving your office and making sure you walk down to the end of the driveway to get the mail before
Mhm.
you go and interact with someone, gives you a fake commute. Yeah, there are so many things, but what can happen is I was very disrupted. I like to work in my cave for days, working on my writing, designing, and making things and beautiful slides. And all of a sudden, people wanted my attention every other hour.
Mhm.
Children need to be. So I was like, okay, where am I? And I have to literally, where am I? I'm creating certainty from the scarf model. Where am I? What do I do? I'm going to get back here in maybe an hour later on. What do I need to do in that hour? Write it
Mhm.
down. Boom, I can leave that now.
Mhm.
I am now still in the calm stage, and now I can engage it. with whatever needs to be done, whatever disaster has unfolded with a new puppy,
Mm-hmm.
and children needing help. They need help.
Right.
So I need to be present for them. And then when they're done, I need to be like, okay, now I'm going to go back and do the work, and I know where I am.
Well, and
Um,
I also wonder if, like, because I didn't really put a home office together uh immediately, right? I mean, and even then it was like stages. It was like the first time was just like something makeshift because like this is going to end and we're
mm,
all going to go back to normal. And then I had to kind of double down and actually like buy a desk and like not just work off of the table in the basement. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, there's a
And
moment about
I
6 months in.
yeah. But I think what it also kind of made me realize is that if I didn't try to integrate it, if I didn't as a leader try to see how it would work, and what were the difficulties, what were the benefits and all of that, um, I wouldn't quite understand the benefit of it. And I wouldn't understand. So, what behaviors should leaders kind of do in order to continue to be the disruptor instead of the disrupted? And I feel like in some cases they have to experience
Yeah,
it. But what else
you have
should
to
we be
feel
doing?
it. You have
Yeah.
to feel if if you are already fairly calm, you're probably doing a lot of these already.
Okay.
So one, you got to think about a number of different areas, and I think that being blind to the problems is someone being disrupted. Being curious about the environment we're in, and maybe a little bit like, wow, this is different, um, is a way of helping to unlock the brain. So the first one is don't be blind to your problem. Is just say, look, there is a problem. We need to start working on it. That's the first thing. That's kind of your activator. And I have a very good friend of mine, um, and he's an entrepreneur. He's a very highly intelligent person. He builds mainframe systems and creates things that I didn't even know were possible or even needed to be in the digital world. And when we sat down outside early on in the pandemic around a fire, we would catch up and talk business. You know what he said to me? He said, "Oh, this is exciting, isn't it?" He said, "We're the first people to live through a pandemic in 100 years." And he was genuinely excited. Wow, I wonder what's going to happen. And I said, "Well, easy." And he said, "Well, come on, I'm not about to roam the streets or do anything erratic." But he said, "My family's, think about it. My family's safe. Um, but this is cool. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, is work going to change forever?" And that's just who he is. So he's
Hmm.
naturally a disruptor. And we need to help people by using their routines in their corporate structure to achieve that level of, wow, this is cool. Um,
Mm.
um, and it's curiosity, it's excitement about the unknown. So people need to do a couple of things. One is to focus on their purpose as a leader in the organization. What is our purpose? Or if you're running the business, what's the purpose we want to achieve? Okay, how are we going to do that? Have some ambition. Big hairy goals. That doesn't go away. Have like, yeah, we still want to do this, but how are we going to do it? So the bigger the goal, the more innovation has to happen.
Hmm.
It's a bit like you could set yourself, well, I only expect 5% growth because it's COVID right now. Yeah, okay. Is that really going to help someone be a disruptor? No,
No.
they're just going to do what they've done before, make it a little bit more efficient, a bit of tweaking, and maybe they get 4 or 5% and pat each other on the back. So, no, no, it's like, no, we could take advantage of it. Wouldn't it be great if we could take over more market share, 25% market share, or find a way? Now we're virtual, means we could take over different global markets. That's a real thing that people can do.
Hmm.
Let's get behind that. And then all of a sudden, that the bigger the goal, the bigger the thought process and creativity has to be to achieve it. Because you can't do it with just what you've achieved so far in the business. So there's that as well. So there's being interested in the environment. There's purpose. Um, and then after that, it becomes much more around the step-by-step parts of co-creation, getting people to create things together from different areas of the business. Um, the more diverse you can get the ideas, you now have more access to people than ever before, because all you've got to do is send them a link, and all of a sudden I'm in your living room. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you how many people I've spoken to that I've never had access to before because they're all too busy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a sales organization I work with, and they always complained about not being able to get meetings, and now they can get 20 minutes with CEOs and CMOs that they never dreamed possible. Now
Yeah.
that's something to get excited about. How can we
Yeah.
take advantage of that? So the co-creation piece is a huge piece of it, and having genuine connections with people. And I think
Mm-hmm.
COVID has helped that because people are genuinely concerned about each other. We're all affected by the same thing. We have relatedness. We have
Mm-hmm.
everyone's been affected by
Right.
that COVID. So let's talk about it. Let's make a connection. Um, and lastly, we need to put a process around how do we experiment but then execute quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the tricky bit. That's the bit where you must have to break some of your project management, putting products into processes. You need to do things much quicker. Can we try a piece of this to see if
Right.
it would work? What if we just do a small experimental target group to see whether this system's going to work in practice and not
Mm-hmm.
cause us more problems than harm? Can we just do, what's what's the one change in our systems that's going to give us the most benefit? Let's try that first, see how it goes, and then come back together really quick. So iterative learning loops, experimenting, but then executing it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I say that as a throwaway comment. All the leaders are listening to this are going to be like, yeah, thank you, Michael. Well, yeah, it does. I know it takes
Execution is
planning.
so easy.
It's just easy. It's just to
Easy.
follow a set process. I'm
Right.
an entrepreneur. It's not a problem, right? For me,
Right.
no, it needs steps, but save the double checking and the well, that'll never work mentality, or well, that's got to go through audit
Yeah.
first, and say, okay, I know it's got to go through that, but where could we try it out first to see if it works? I don't want to go through that whole process and find
Right.
that we didn't really get much of a return. Could we just try it with a group of people?
Mm-hmm.
And in my town, we have the COVID, the rapid test. We have
Mm-hmm.
a really great farm. They make biopharma products. So they've turned what's it called? The ultrasound that you go into. They've
Oh
turned that
yeah.
into something that you can connect to your phone and use on the moment. So they are real
Wow.
experimenters. So imagine if you could at home have a COVID test, but also flu A, flu B, cold, and all the other kind of infection tests, and you could just do that yourself, put it in a machine and at home, and talk about the uncertainty. Well, that's what they're developing in our small town in
Right.
Connecticut, and it's exciting to see them do that. But they have to go through all the regulations. So they've thought, well, how can we still gather the data, but not just go through? So the data, we know what we're putting into the regulatory environment. We know what's happening. So they're doing
Mm-hmm.
that. They're just getting people to experiment with it. No harm is coming to anyone, and at the end of the day, they're going to end up with a much better product quicker to market than anyone else.
That is, I mean, my head is swimming, good and bad. Like, I'm like questioning some of my, theories, but also I think that you've given so much information about it. The last question, which I really feel like you've kind of already addressed and we just talked about. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
kind of just look at this as like, what can leaders do now, right? What can we do now to help prevent disrupted behavior or situations? Because I think that, there's the going forward and how is it going to stay long lasting as well. But even now, like what should we be focused on or doing so that we can kind
Oh
of
wow.
prevent this?
There's a lot. There's a lot
You
to do,
know.
I have to say. So I'm probably activating the pendulum again here. But stay with me in the middle for a moment.
Okay.
Think of it as this: that we have business strategies, we have people strategies as a leader. So why not spend a bit of time thinking about my communication strategy to employees? How am I going to make them? Where can I give them clarity? Yeah. How can I advise them? How can I give them more autonomy? Yeah. Or a sensible autonomy so they feel in control. What can we do virtually or and face to face and hybrid that's going to get relatedness together? Yeah. And making sure our policies are fair. Actually sitting down leaders together, reading out the policies, say, well, is it necessary? Is it fair to everyone? No, get rid of it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
bring everyone back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that all of those areas, um, status is making sure that we value people for the role that they play in the organization as well. So all of those factors are going to help people keep them in a more adaptive, calm state so they can think, ask good questions, and get involved. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if they're driving a business forward, you'd normally have a business strategy um, of some kind. So I would say that they need to make four big shifts. Yeah. Um, they'll need to spend time creating genuine communication, which I've just explained how. That's a huge piece. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking to people more than you ever have, but you're pushing them into an adaptive state. You have an objective for that. The other thing is what's a big hairy goal that we can get behind? What's our ambition? What's our purpose? Let's look at that. Let's get people excited about that. What we're trying to achieve, and then experiment and execute in small cycles to achieve that. And lastly, is that idea of co-creation is just unleashing the extraordinary. It's and that usually comes from spending time talking to different people, diverse people through the organization, turning up and asking, yeah, what's going on for you? How are you winning? What challenges are you facing, and how can I support you? Even if you don't even have to be working in the same group. All of my examples that I talk about came to me. I didn't look for those examples; they happened because I was having a conversation with someone. And the
Right.
same is true for leaders. You've got to have conversations with people about where they're going, what's working well, and how can I support you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and if somebody is kind of listening now and maybe is saying, okay, I'm on the right track, or maybe I'm not on the right track, but I hear what you're saying and I like
Yeah,
it. You really come in and help organizations ingrain and really get into it in maybe a more clear
yes,
fashion, right?
yeah,
So tell us more about you, your firm, and we're going to kind of show people how to connect with you.
sure. I mean, I like working in partnership with organizations, and I usually work on, well, what's their challenge right now? Yeah,
Mhm.
what's their challenge? What do they need solved? And I can pull on different ideas, what's relevant to their people, and build um, an event or a virtual event, whatever it might be, in order to get the right minds, to get them in this adaptive state first, and then get them focused on what they need to achieve
Mhm.
overall. I mean, the best way to get hold of me is if you're just curious. Unfortunately, I can't hide from anything. I have a very rare last name, Teape. So if you Google Michael Teape, there are a few Michael Teapes in this world, but I'll come up. You know what I look like now.
Right.
And also, you'll find us, our website is teapetraininginternational.com. You can always email us at info@teapetraining.com. And lastly, if you want to have a conversation, reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Our short handle is Teape Training. And yeah, have a conversation. I also have some freebies up for people to download to help them with this virtual conversation environment. So please do reach out. Thank you.
No, I think this has been really helpful. And I think that all leaders, you know, realistically, if they can be open-minded, they can see that, you relate to some of the things and there's always room for improvement. So, I think that we are in a very unique time right
Yes.
now, for business, and we're all trying to figure it out. So resources like you who like this whole time I'm just like, yes. Oh, okay. I need to write. I'm going to have to go back and take some notes as I watch it again. But I think those three questions are really important. And so I thank you for giving us some great advice. And if you want to reach out to Mike, then please do and get some training going on. So I love it. Well, there's lots of
Great.
topics, and we might bring you back for some other topics as well
Always
because
happy to talk about what's relevant and important to help people moving forward.
I love it.
That's what it's about. So thank you so much, Melissa, for having me as well. It was an absolute pleasure. Um, yeah, I love talking about this stuff. So yeah, what
Yeah,
else can we talk about?
it was great. It was really good information. We appreciate it. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.